Okay, so in this video I'm going to walk you guys through downloading Java and IntelliJ, which is our integrated development environment, which is kind of like a text editor with some more capabilities that we'll be using for this class for writing Java programs. So I went to the two links on the website. One is for Java, JDK8, and the other one is for IntelliJ. Now you can get to these websites if you just type JDK8 and do a Google search for it, JDK8, and that will take you to this first website. And if you do a Google search for IntelliJ, that'll take you to this other website. So we'll go ahead and download both of these softwares. We're going to do JDK8, 8U, I don't know why it's doing that, go away menu, 8U144, and we'll have to accept a license agreement, and you'll have to determine which operating system your computer's running. For example, if you have a 64-bit Windows machine, you're going to download this one. If you have a 32-bit machine, you'll download this one. If you have a Mac machine, you'll download that one. If you don't know what your operating system is, you can find out if you just go open a File Explorer and then right-click on this PC, select Properties, and where it says System Type, it says, mine says 64-bit operating system, so I'm going to download the 64-bit version. So let's go ahead and do that. So 64-bit. And while that's downloading, we're going to go ahead and download IntelliJ as well. So over here, we're going to use the Community Edition, which should be plenty good for our class. It's free, it's open source, meaning anyone can view the code that they use to write it. My computer's a Windows machine. If you have a Mac, you download the Mac. If you have Linux, you download the Linux one. And we're going to download this .exe file. So I'm going to click on download for that. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while these two things download and then pick it back up when they're done. Okay, so we've downloaded JDK8 and IntelliJ. This is just the downloads folder. And so we want to install them in this order, JDK8 first, and then IntelliJ, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So first, let's install JDK8. And you can basically just click next through all these. You don't need to worry about any of the options for each of these, and allow it to select this default path for installation, program files, Java, JDK 1.8. Keep in mind where this is, because we're going to need to reference this when we install IntelliJ in a moment. So mine's in program files within Java, and then that's JDK8. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while this downloads and pick it back up when it finishes. Okay, alright, so that just finished installing. We're going to go ahead and hit close. You may have also had to install the JRE, which is the virtual machine that all Java code needs to run. So you should have installed that as well. Alright, so Java's installed. Now we're going to go ahead and install our IDE called IntelliJ. And so let's run the .exe that you downloaded. And note, it's pretty large. It's almost a gigabyte. So make sure you have enough space on your hard drive to install it. Space is pretty cheap nowadays, with I think terabyte drives being around $70 or something like that. So, but this is almost a gigabyte. Don't worry about creating associations or shortcuts. You can just hit next to this. Go ahead and install Alright, I'll pause the video and pick this up when this finishes. It'll take a little while. Get a coffee or something.
2,000 years later.
Okay, so finally finished installing. Go ahead and check mark the run IntelliJ because we're going to write our first program as well to make sure that everything is hooked up and working. So once you've clicked it, finish. Okay, and we don't have a previous IntelliJ to work with, so we're going to say do not import settings. Click OK. And go ahead and pick your favorite color. You can either use the white one or the dark one. I'm just going to use the default theme. And go ahead and click skip all and set defaults. If you want to go into some of the options of that you can work with IntelliJ, like Git and other kinds of version controls, you can take a look at that, but I wouldn't worry about that for this class. Okay, so this is the screen you're going to see when you open up IntelliJ. As long as you haven't opened a project recently or you closed your last project, it will default open to the last thing you were working on, which is kind of nice. But if you close that, then it will take you to this screen. And since we haven't worked on anything yet, it's just going to give us the screen. So we're going to create our first project. And note that that in the background. Note that at the very top it says no SDK and it's red, so it doesn't like this. It's telling us we need to associate the JDK with our with this program, and we're only going to have to do this the first time, unless sometimes when you move from one machine to another, you might need to repoint where your JDK is installed. So we're going to say new, and we downloaded JDK into the program files folder and in the Java folder, and you should see two folders within that, JDK and JRE. We want to highlight the JDK folder and click OK. Now it should be a little blue. And let's say 1.8 next to it. Okay, once you've done that, go ahead and click next. Go ahead and click next again. And now we have to create a folder for this class to house all of our work. For example, you could use documents. If you have a Dropbox or another kind of file cloud storage system, OneDrive, Google Drive, you can use those. I'm just going to save it locally for the sake of this video, but I typically keep my projects on Dropbox so I can access them from any machine. Sometimes I'm on my laptop, sometimes I'm working at home on a desktop, sometimes I'm at school, so I like being able to access all my files and programs no matter where I am. So in Documents, I went ahead and made a AP Computer Science folder. It's currently empty. We're going to have this be our root for all of our projects in this class. Each IntelliJ program we're going to write is going to be in its own folder. So that's how we're going to keep things organized. I'm going to go ahead and also put a Unit 0 folder, the basics, because we're going to have enough projects where if we just leave them all in this folder, it's going to get really messy. So it's good to keep things organized somewhat by unit or by time. Pick your favorite organization system, but just don't have all of your projects for the whole year just laid out in this one folder. So we've got our Unit 0 folder here. So let's go ahead and find Unit 0. So it's in Users, Documents, AP Computer Science, and there's Unit 0. Now I'm going to make a new folder with this little icon for this project and make that my project directory. So new folder, I can also press Alt Insert, or I can click this little icon when I've selected the folder I want my project to be in. So we're going to call this Hello World. So we're going to make the prototypical first program you do with any language, something that just prints Hello World to the console. All right. So now we've got Hello World created. We'll go ahead and click OK. And the project name up here should match the project location folder over there. Go ahead and hit finish. And it'll take a minute to set everything up. It shows tip. I'm going to X out of that. Close. This little icon on the bottom, this bar here, tells you when it's ready to start working in. Once this says filled out, you should see some slightly different things on the screen. You can start actually writing your program into. But it usually doesn't take too long unless there's lots of files. Now, one thing to note is that the IDE we're working with, IntelliJ, has a lot of tools. It is a professional IDE. A lot of people use this that are developers in their daily lives. And we're not going to use nearly all of the capabilities it has. So it might be a little confusing at first, but that's just because it's giving you lots and lots of tools and lots of options for structuring your programs. Because you can imagine if you're working at a large company like Amazon or Microsoft, you're not making small programs. You're writing these large, complex programs that interact with lots of other programs. So you need a good environment to handle that complexity. So that's why it can seem a little daunting at first when working with an IDE like this. But there's some really fantastic things that you'll appreciate, like autocomplete. It does this IntelliSense thing that you'll see in a little bit. Okay, so we finished loading the project. Over here on the left, we're going to go ahead and expand this folder for Hello World. You should see a SRC folder was generated for you, a .idea folder. Don't worry about this folder. This is all information for IntelliJ's purposes. Same with this file, the .iml file, just lets IntelliJ know that Hello World, this folder, is an IntelliJ project. So you don't need to edit this or open this ever. So SRC, go ahead and right click on that. And we're going to create a new Java class. And we'll go ahead and name this class Hello World as well. Now, one thing to note, the class name and the project folder don't have to be the same. In fact, you might have multiple Java classes with different names all in one project. So you should now have a new file in the SRC folder that's called helloworld.java. And only a couple lines of code are in this file. It says public class hello world, open squiggly brace, close squiggly brace. Now, one thing that's important is that this hello world matches the name of this file, helloworld.java. If I were to, example, delete this O, hello world, then this program's not going to work. It's not going to run. We need the file name and the class name to match up exactly. Capitalization as well, so it is case sensitive. If this was a lowercase w, it complains as well. So Java is case sensitive, so it'll take some getting used to. You can't lowercase things when you want them to be uppercase and vice versa. All right, so we're going to write our first program. It's going to be simple. It's just going to print something to the computer. All right. So in between the curly braces, go ahead and add a line and write these words: public static void main open parentheses string with a capital S, left bracket, right bracket, space, args, args, and then close parentheses. And then another open curly brace. And note it gave us this right curly brace automatically. Go ahead and hit enter. And in between the curly braces that we just created, write system with the capital S dot out dot println open parentheses double quotes hello space world exclamation mark. And then you can retype the close quotes if you want, retype the right parentheses. It doesn't recreate those. Or you can just go to the end of the line. And then at the very end of the line, put a semicolon. All right. So that was a lot of new characters that you probably haven't used very much before. Just take a moment to identify where they are on the keyboard. The curly braces are in the upper right, close to the enter, as well as the left and right brackets. A semicolon always shows up at the end of every line, so you're going to be typing lots and lots of semicolons. And then parentheses, you probably are familiar with where parentheses are. Now note, if any of these things are misspelled or you forget and you use a comma instead of a dot, it suddenly complains, which is nice. It's error checking for you as you type. And so yeah, so just double check that everything is, nothing is red, everything looks nice, and we'll do a build on it. So click build and click on build project. What this is going to do is it's going to take our code that we wrote in Java and then break it down into a code that the computer can understand that is closer to ones and zeros. It's still not quite ones and zeros, it's a step up from that, but it makes it into a machine language that the computer's going to read. And it should have generated this out folder over here. You can look at the what was created, this hello-world.class file, but it's just going to look like a bunch of gibberish. Oh, it wants to decompile it. Let's not decompile it. So it did actually, it regenerated the code that we wrote earlier. The next step, once we've built it, is to run it. So go ahead and click on run, and then go down to run, and select hello world, which is the class that we just wrote. And if everything went smoothly, which it should have if it built properly, we'll see the computer just said hello world. So there's our first program. Yay! You wrote one.